Today, on Be Something Wonderful, how to loose negative thoughts. I am your host, Tom Karen, and this is the Be Something Wonderful studio of higher consciousness, where we help you level up and become the best version of yourself. Creators, welcome back. I got an email from a subscriber that says, Tom, I'm new to your channel and I'm now binge watching your videos. I found you because I was looking for some answers on how to get rid of my negative thoughts, how to get rid of my negative thinking. And I was wondering if you could talk about that. Well, guys, we're going to talk about that and unpack that and more. Well, here's what I want to say. First, welcome to the channel, and I am delighted that you've been watching the videos. But here's what I want to say. Whether it's my channel or other things, don't binge watch to look for an answer. Don't binge watch to get rid of negative thoughts. Binge watch to enjoy it. Right? Why? Because you can never find an answer when you're looking for it. You can never find what's lost. You can't get rid of anything. You can't get rid of negative thoughts or anything in the universe. When you try to get rid of it, you keep it present or you keep it real in your experience. And it's also true when you're looking for something, right? You can't get to the bottom of anything. There's no bottom. And you can't find what is lost. Right? All of that is resistance from the 3D you. So if you're going to binge watch, do it to have fun, and then the answers will come. Right? They come when you're not looking. You find it when you're not looking for it. Right? You get rid of things when you're not trying to get rid of them. They dissolve. Right? You simply observe them and let them be, like negative thoughts. Let's unpack this some more. These 6 words Jesus said when he was in front of the tomb of Lazarus after he raised Lazarus from the dead. These are so powerful. Let me read them. Loose him and let him go, or unbind him and let him go. This is what Jesus said after he raised Lazarus from the dead. What's the message here? Of course, Lazarus was wrapped and tied, right? But the metaphysical meaning here is so powerful. Jesus is saying, let go of all thoughts of fear, doubt, lack, and limitation. That's what Jesus said. Loose yourself from the 3D world. Let go of those negative thoughts, those negative thinking, the fear, the doubt, and limitation. Let it be, right? Don't resist it. Don't fight it. Simply loose it. Unbind it. Right? Let it be. When you simply observe them from your higher mind or your Christ mind, they no longer can bind you. Hear this. When you're no longer looking to get rid of them, when you're no longer looking to solve that problem, and just let those negative thoughts be, they will dissolve and then those higher thoughts will come. Right? You're seeing that the only reason remember, negative any thoughts are all universal in nature. And when you're in a lower state of consciousness, you will attract those thoughts because you're in that lower state of consciousness. If you simply stop resisting them and just observe them, you will rise naturally to who you really are. You'll naturally rise in consciousness because that's who you really are. Remember, your inner being or that Christ within you, that higher mind, whatever you want to call it, never looks where you're looking. Never sees you in that light, never thinks a negative thought ever about you. That's why you feel so off. It's your separation from that. It's because your inner being sees you differently than what you're seeing. And that's why it feels crappy. That's your emotional guidance system telling you that you're looking or thinking of something that's not true of you. Right? You're looking where your inner being never looks. Your inner being only sees you and wish fulfilled with you having all of your desires. Yet you look in the opposite direction of your inner being. That's why it hurts. That's why it feels bad. That's why you can never get rid of negative thoughts. Your inner being doesn't recognize them, doesn't see them as real, and knows they're not a reality. This is big. So whatever you bind on earth shall have been bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall have been loosed in heaven. So if you're binding yourself to that 3D consciousness on earth, then those negative thoughts will be there, right? Because you're in that lower state. But as you rise, as you rise in consciousness, you create a state within of those higher thoughts. Right? But if you bind yourself on earth, you're going to be bound in heaven. In other words, your inner state's going to reflect those negative thoughts. right? This is big. But as you loose these thoughts, as you observe them and let them be, then you're creating an inner state that is heaven on earth, right? That's your inner state. That's your Christ mind. That's your higher state of consciousness. Make negative thoughts no longer part of your story. Stop telling the story that you need to get rid of them. Stop telling the story that you have to avoid them or resist them, right? Or look for a solution. And then they will dissolve, right? So let's hit this a little bit more. The kingdom of heaven is your higher mind. It's your superconsciousness. It's that higher self, right? Thoughts are universally and not individually rooted. A truth cannot be created, but only perceived. Paramhansa Yogananda said this. Very powerful. Thoughts are universally and not individually rooted. Those thoughts are universally rooted in that, negative thoughts are universally rooted in that lower state of consciousness. But as you rise up into that higher state, then you're going to have thoughts and attract thoughts of higher thoughts, higher thinking, of love, of compassion, of kindness, of gratitude. That's where those thoughts are. A truth cannot be created, but only perceived. I love that, or revealed, right? Whatever you affirm or deny in your conscious mind, or on earth, in other words, is created within your inner world of your higher consciousness, right? So whatever you can create or affirm, right, through your conscious thoughts, then you create that in your higher mind. In other words, you rise in consciousness to who you really are, right? Whatever you affirm or set loose, right? All power, authority has been given to me in heaven and earth. All power and authority has been given to you through that Christ consciousness, through that higher you, right? Jesus said it. Remember when Jesus was in front of Pontius Pilate, and he says, "You have no authority over me unless it was given from above." Negative thoughts, lack, limitation doesn't have any authority over you unless it was given from above. And in Jesus, or that higher you, your inner being doesn't see those thoughts and would never give you permission to have them, right? You're simply binding yourself to a lower state of consciousness. Let them loose. Let yourself loose. Right, as Abraham Hicks says, a cork, if you hold it under water, if you let it go, it will naturally float. You will naturally rise in consciousness where those higher thoughts are. That's what we're talking about. Thoughts are universally rooted. So, when they talk about denial, what they're saying is replace negative thoughts of lower consciousness with the opposite. That's how you get rid of them. You replace them. Remember the law of substitution. You don't resist them. You don't reject them. Denying is not resisting. Denying is not resisting. It's replacing them. It's letting them be, and then letting those bigger thoughts, those higher thoughts of who you really are, replace them. Observe and reach for the higher thought, right? And Paul said in the scripture, "I die daily." What was Paul getting at when he said, "I die daily"? I die to my old self. I die to my negative thoughts. I die to my limitations and lack, and I resurrect, or I'm reborn into that higher state of consciousness with those higher thoughts, right? And this is what Jesus said in Luke. If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. This is what Jesus said. Hear this. If anyone wishes to come after me, meaning to that rise to that higher state of consciousness, right? To that higher you, to that inner being, where your inner being is, where your inner being is looking. Look where your inner being is looking, right? He must deny himself. What do you mean? Deny negative thoughts. Deny the conscious you, the 3D you, right? Any thoughts of lack or limitation or doubt and fear, and take up his cross, meaning die. Take up his cross means die to that old state, die to that lower state of consciousness, and follow me. Follow Jesus, rise in consciousness. Very clear here with Paul saying, "I die daily," and Jesus saying, "If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." In other words, die to that old state. Wow, that's big. You must die to that lower or unwanted state of consciousness before you can rise to and occupy that higher state, or that desire, or the desire of your ideal, that ideal state. Right? Make room for infinity. Remember, all that is already exists within you. Right? The 3D world's within you. Make room for it. And so you can rise naturally to that higher state, right? Make room for that higher consciousness to flood your being, right? Make room for it to flood your being. Make room for infinity, right? You're limiting infinity, looking through that narrow, limited view of your conscious mind, of that 3D you, of that limited mind. So it's impossible to get rid of or somehow deactivate negative thoughts. You can't do it because as soon as you put your attention on it, you're creating them. You create them as you think of them. You create them as you put your light on them. You create them as you put your consciousness and your awareness on it. Because the second you do, you put your attention on them and keep them real in your reality and in your vibration, right? So what do? Instead, put your attention on higher thoughts, wanted versus unwanted. All the spiritual greats say this. But I really want to get it through a different, presented in a different way to you today, right? That there is nothing to get rid of. That they only exist in that lower state of consciousness, which you're binding yourself to, right? When you think of the unwanted, move to the opposite of what you want. That's always the state, right? You could even get in the alpha state, right? Many times if a negative thought comes to me, I just relax, breathe deeply, and then start entering that relaxed state of alpha, right? That breathing in and out and then going within, shutting my eyes, going within, and then it just dissolves. It feels so good. You're connecting with that bliss, right? Try this. Here's a thing that I also have recommended and works for me. Imagine you're in a game show and when an unwanted or negative thought, as it comes, think of it as being shown on a screen in a game show, and that when you have to press the buzzer and state the opposite. So when you get a negative thought, you press that buzzer and step the not. Fear shows on the screen. You say love, 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 and then you think of it and you dwell in that. Right? This is the idea, right? If hate gets on this, if it's hate on the screen, love is the opposite, right? If it's frustration, bliss is the opposite, right? So this is the idea, right? I am broke, comes on the screen, I am flowing with abundance is the opposite, right? You can imagine yourself and make it fun, right? That's why I always encourage you can come up with your own imaginal acts or your own meditations to do this, right? I like the game show thing because it's fun. You press the buzzer and then you come up with the opposite. This gets you in the practice of knowing that we're in the game of life, that nothing's serious going on here. These negative thoughts are not serious. That's really what I'm trying to get at, guys. That you can just as easily reach for a positive thought than you can as a negative thought, right? We only create this whole dark cloud around it that it's hard to get rid of, that they're hiding out. That oh my God, the more I resist them, the more they're creative. Well, that's true of anything, right? So make it fun. So let's really hit this a little bit more. Ideas, concepts of yourself, of the world, are what drives thoughts. Right? So what's the idea what's the idea or the concept of yourself? Once you have that ideal concept of yourself, the way God looks at you, the way your inner being sees you, then automatically you're going to attract thoughts that align with that concept of yourself or align with that ideal. So it's not the thoughts necessarily, it's the ideal or the concept you're setting for yourself, right? And when you're in that lower state of conscious mind, when you're in that lower state of consciousness, you attract thoughts that are of a lower nature. And these are the negative thoughts. When you start identifying yourself with your ideal more and more you're going to attract positive thoughts or empowering thoughts or thoughts of that higher ideal, right? Loving concepts attract loving thoughts. Right? Remember, love is an unlimited energy. It's an expanding energy. Fearful thoughts are limitations. It's a contracting energy. So if you have a fearful concept of yourself, a lackful concept of yourself, if you see yourself as small and the world the world is full of fear, then that's how you're going to see the world. And those are the thoughts you're going to attract, right? Loving thoughts, loving concepts or ideas of yourself in the world attract loving thoughts, compassion, gratitude, appreciation, kindness. Fearful concepts of yourself, of the world, attract lackful thoughts, fearful thoughts, envy, frustration. That's all it is. That's all it ever is. Just identify that concept. Neville Goddard talks about that, right? Your concept of yourself defines the state that you're going to occupy, right? The idea you have of yourself in the world defines the state that you're going to occupy in the thoughts that you're going to attract, right? High ideas attract high thoughts. Grand concepts attract grand thoughts, right? Think like God. You are all that is. You are God. Think like Jesus. Think like God. And and then you really will create heaven on earth. That is how to loose negative thoughts. I am your host, Tom Caron, and this is the Be Something Wonderful studio of Higher Consciousness, where we help you level up and become the best version of yourself. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification button. Like and share our videos. That's how we get our message out. Hit us up on Facebook at Be Something Wonderful, on Instagram and Twitter at Tom Caron, our website at tomcaron.com, at BeSomethingWonderful.com, or write me and say hello at info@BeSomethingWonderful.com. I would love to hear from you. Until next time, with great love, this is Tom. See you soon.